They own the public spaces out here at the festival.
You gonna turn off the camera?
Nope.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go get a police officer. Be right back.
Okay.
Are you selling water?
No, but you can have one.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I have power. 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 I have power.
It's time once again for our annual Money Bomb, our 48-hour broadcast to raise $1 million for our operation. But for our donators, we do have special gifts. With a donation of $365, you get the limited edition InfoWars Money Bomb t-shirt. With a donation of $500, you get not only the t-shirt, but also 5 DVDs. And with a donation of $1,000, you get the t-shirt, the DVDs, and the limited edition InfoWars Money Bomb Bullhorn, pre-recorded with a special message from Alex himself. Now be aware that your contributions do not have to be limited to donations. The InfoWars shop will be up and operating the full 48 hours. But the action isn't limited to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. Stop by eBay for these great gifts, such as the InfoWars Sledgehammer, broken in and signed by Alex himself.
Oh, yeah, New World Order. The InfoWars coming for you.
As well as these other great tools. And the granddaddy of all auction prizes, the Norman microphone that Alex has used in his broadcast daily for the past several years.
It's InfoWars Money Bomb 2012.
And just in case they go out of style this November, we dug deep and pulled out the Obama Joker shirts. And as you can see, it bears the Alex Jones signature right there. The InfoWars Money Bomb launches this Thursday, October 18th, and runs for 48 hours. Click on the links at the bottom of the screen to navigate you where you need to go. I'm Jakari Jackson, and if you are watching this transmission, you are the resistance.
James Wesley Rawles is with us for the next 45 minutes, and then I'm going to go rest, not really sleep, because then I'd be in a coma to going coast to coast to AM tonight, and then I'm back. 48-hour transmission. James Wesley Rawles. We should have him back more often. People just love this guy. We're going to get into so many of the points that he's really concerned about. He's been an enthusiastic survivalist since his teenage years. He's a top survivalist, survivalblog.com. He's got a new best-selling book out. You know how I knew he had a best-selling book out? My wife bought it, and I read it 2 nights ago. It's in our preparedness area in the basement. He has a bachelor's art degree from San Jose University and a minor degree in military science, history, and military. Former U.S. Army intelligence officer who held a top security clearance with special background investigation and access to sensitive compartmentalized information. He was awarded Officer Specialty 35A Tactical All Sorts Intelligence Officer, an additional skill identifier 5M Electronic Warfare Officer. He achieved a rank of captain, attended the Army NBC Defense Officer School with the Northern Warfare School at Fort Greely, Alaska, survivalblog.com. He joins us now here, just since he was on 3 or 4 months ago. It's all happening. The 1.6 billion bullets, the preparations for martial law, the military checkpoints, not drills on the highways, aircraft carriers massing in the Gulf, all of it. It is bonkers. And we've got a bunch of points he wants to go all over. Prepare to be pulled off the plane. There has attempts to put flags on his site, attempts to crash his website, ping attacks. Yeah, it's all crazy. A political attack on his writings on Wikipedia to delete articles about his books. But just so many points we're going to make. But Mr. Rawles, James Wesley Rawles, one of the most highly respected survivalist prepper researchers out there. Where are we in America, but worldwide, right now on the grand chessboard?
Well, Alex, I think we are on the slippery slope is where we are. There's obviously huge economic problems that are right on the horizon, and people need to be prepared for those. But there's also the whole political milieu, and it's obvious that if anyone is in the liberty movement or the constitutionalist movement or the prepper movement or the Oath Keeper movement, anyone who has a high profile in any of those movements can expect to be targeted.
Anybody who isn't an anti-American piece of filth, anyone who is a real American, basic, red-blooded, good person, we're the bad guys.
Yeah, that's right. It's really funny that the people that used to be held up and put on a pedestal are now considered enemies of the state. Anyone who has traditional American values, anyone who's an outspoken Christian, anyone who is opposed to NDAA, anyone who is critical of the government's handling of money, and anyone who's critical of our U.S. Treasury being so deeply involved with the private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve, anyone who points any of that out is going to get targeted. And
I think you're alluding to the confirmed.
Like be ready for it.
Absolutely, I think you're alluding to the prepper put on a no-fly list, can't get back to the U.S. from the state of Hawaii. I mean,
right. There will be selective enforcement, just like that.
All right, well, I mean, continue along those lines. You yourself, I don't talk a lot about this just because so much of it happens it would get old for the audience, but the amount of harassment we've come under in the last month is epic, which again, added to everything else, I can just feel the energy level rising towards a crescendo.
Well, yes. I think it's obvious that something's coming to a head, and I think that as time goes on, we'll see more and more hack attacks on websites with denial of service type attacks where they basically try to ping websites off the internet. We'll see tracking of website visitors with things like the cookie attachments they did to my website a few months back. We were able to pretty well document that, and it all got traced back to a big government data center. There's also going to be things like selective enforcement, like the guy who just got pulled off the plane in Hawaii this week. We need to be ready for that, and we need to be just steadfast. We can't let our movements be muzzled by either by the government or by organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center that are very selectively trying to besmirch people with, basically painting people with a broad brush.
They're coming after us because they know we know the game plan, and they know everybody's starting to listen to us, James. They know that our people are listening to us. I mean, I can't even, if I told people the amount of visitors we get a day now, I can't even believe it myself. 3 million a day just to Infowars.com now the last week.
Wow.
I mean, this is scaring the criminals. So people better know we're not.
The powers that be are feeling the heat, and they're in desperation mode right now. And all of these steps that they're taking against the liberty movement and the prepper movement and the Oath Keeper movement and constitutionalist movement, all of those steps they're taking are signs of their desperation. It shows you how close they are to losing their grip.
Yes.
And they're already losing their grip on the mass media. The mass media, the mainstream media, is losing more and more market share with every passing day to the alternative media, to blogs. They're losing it to radio and television shows like yours. They're losing it to podcasts and so forth. More and more people are turning to alternative media, and at this point, they basically cannot stop it unless they completely shut down the mass media and shut down the internet, which just can't happen. not unless they want to crash the entire system.
I agree. And again, I'm trying to sit here with a sock in my mouth when you're talking because everything you're saying makes me just want to confirm everything you're saying. But I mean, obviously, the police and military are starting to really figure out bad guys are in control of the government. And it's a lot deeper than Obama. Geopolitically, I know you're all about getting ourselves ready, and that's the most important thing at the micro level. But if we look at the macro, I mean, where is the world right now? I mean, where is it going? Why? I mean, how much crazier is it going to get? What are some triggers?
Well, I think it's going to get a lot crazier, Alex, because the austerity measures that they've implemented in Greece and Spain and Italy are really just the beginning. And if you think we've seen a lot of riots in the streets of Greece and Spain, that's actually just the first stages of what may turn into civil wars in those countries. Because the level of austerity that they're going to have to implement is huge. They're basically going to have to shut down their entire welfare states. They're going to have to deny pension funds that people have been promised for decades. And they're going to cut off people from the banking world. They're going to cut people off from all the traditional government entitlements that have been in place for many, many years in Europe. And the backlash is going to be huge. The economic crisis that's unfolding in Europe really is just still in its early stages, and it is yet to really spill over into the U.S., Canada, and especially Japan. I think Japan is actually going to be the next major country that's going to implode. They may implode before we do because their debt level is so much higher versus GDP than here in the United States. So I think things are going to get a lot worse in Europe, certainly a lot worse before they get better. And in the short term, I think there actually may be, because of all of the capital outflows coming out of Europe, a short-term boost to the American stock market, simply because investors are completely scared to death of European investments. But eventually, the gig will be up here as well, and things will implode.
Continue. I'm fighting to not interrupt. Please continue.
Okay. Well, as things fall apart in Europe, we'll see a massive clampdown by the powers that be. They'll want to try to muzzle the media in Europe. There will no longer be a lot of coverage of street protests. If anything, the news that starts coming out of Europe in the new year, I think, is going to become pablum. We're going to see lots of programming coming out of Europe on cultural events, and people in lederhosen drinking beer and singing. And
we're going to see like bizarre, truly Orwellian cover stories.
The announcements of new car models coming out of BMW and Audi. Okay, that's the kind of news that they're going to shove down our throats from Europe, because they won't want to focus on all the street protests that are going on, because they can't let the cat out of the bag that the majority of the citizenry in Greece is fed up and they refuse to take it. They won't be focusing on things like the people in Iceland and Ireland backing out of the EU. And they won't be focusing on alternative markets that are springing up, where people are setting up barter networks, for example, because there's no cash available in Greece and Spain and Italy and Portugal. I think we're going to see a veritable news blackout in Europe starting early next year. And it's going to be up to the alternative media. It's going to be up to individual citizens with, small webcams and cell phone cameras that get on the internet to spread the word about what's actually going on in Europe. The truth will get out, but it's not going to come from the mass media. It's going to come from the alternative media.
Expanding on that, last time we had you on, you broke down your geopolitical view and, pointed out the elite is not in total control. So many of our sources that have really been proven accurate in the past say, for the first time in really modern history, there's a split within the elites because it's getting down to endgame time, and there's a lot of backstabbing going on, and that things are not going well. I think you alluded to the fact that the establishment is not happy campers right now. Where would you say the posture of the engineers, the social engineers, is right now? I mean, are things going well? Because I see articles where they brag, yeah, world government's here, we've set everything up. Meanwhile, the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center say it don't exist. Al-Qaeda is being used to attack Syria, but we've got to give our rights up because Al-Qaeda, is hiding under every table. I mean, things are just becoming cartoon-level insane to where I can't even believe it's gotten to this point, and I'm pretty darn jaded.
Well, Alex, there's definitely two different camps that exist within the European powers that be. One camp is trying to tear the system apart as best they can so that they'll have an excuse to implement things like biochipping or things like a global currency to replace the euro. The other camp basically has seen that they've gone too far, and they're worried about revolution or counter-revolution going on in Europe, and they're scared for their own lives. They're afraid that they're going to be swinging from lampposts. So they're trying to slow the other camp down. They're trying to stabilize the situation. They don't want to see any sort of collapse that would endanger their lives or their property. So it's difficult to predict how things are going to play out because there's definitely two camps with two different approaches that are working simultaneously. I don't know who's going to win out. All I can say is that at a personal level, for anyone in Europe and then eventually here in the States, families had better be prepared to hunker down for an extended period of time with commerce completely disrupted. There won't be food on the supermarket shelves for weeks or months. There won't be jobs. People aren't going to have, there's going to be massive layoffs. There's going to be attempts to evict people from thousands or tens of thousands of homes daily. So people need to have a cash reserve. They need to have a food reserve. They need to have a good source of water and home water filtration because the civic water supplies may be disrupted. And the power grids in a worst case, the power grids may go down.
Hell, the power grids may go down.
A backup plan.
The globalists are already shutting down many of our coal power plants. I live in Austin, James, and in 5 years, my power prices have doubled. And they're on the news saying I'm in a model UN city, and they're going to shut down the final city power plant so we can buy from General Electric plants at even higher prices. I mean, like you said, they're doing everything they can to shut this country down.
Well, Alex, there's definitely change in the wind, and I recommend that all your listeners take full advantage of all the educational resources that you have through Infowars.com. I recommend that they get in touch with some of your advertisers for things like food storage, for things like water filtration, and for alternative investments that'll put them outside of the dollar paradigm and into practical tangibles, things like precious metals.
Listen to this. I talked to a well driller because I already have a well on my property, but it's only 500 feet deep. I want to go 1,000 into the aquifer. And he said, the crazy thing is I used to hear your show, and I thought you were full of it. He goes, did you know all the rich people around here are drilling wells and putting in bunkers and food? I mean, what do you think's going on if the wealthier people are drilling wells and getting food? What do they know is coming, James?
Well, if my current crop of consulting clients is any indication, a lot of people on Wall Street, a lot of people in the banking world, and hedge fund managers in particular are definitely concerned because they're stocking up. They're hiring me to help them pick out survival retreats. They're stocking them for multiple years. The folks that are selling underground shelters are doing a booming business right now. And we're not talking nuclear war here. We're talking about people that want to have an underground shelter because they're worried about their physical safety because of civil unrest. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, more of hidden safe houses.
Well, yes. There's definitely a lot of people that are looking for retreat-type properties. And it's really odd, Alex, because these are people who traditionally have had no interest whatsoever. These are people who are not, bomb shelter oriented or chemical, biological, or radiological defense oriented at all.
No. On my street, there's
are simply people who are in mainly in the banking sphere. And I don't know whether it's just because they have their ear to the ground in terms of what's going to happen with the global credit collapse, or whether they have seen, have had contacts in the corporate world with corporate executives that are warning them that something's coming. But for some reason, suddenly there's thousands of people. Again, it's the majority of them that have contacted me have been with hedge funds. The number of hedge fund managers that I have had for consulting clients has absolutely blossomed.
Yeah, that's the same.
I have more hedge fund managers currently on my roster of consulting clients than I had combined for the last 5 years. And that's all happened in just the last 6 months.
Survivalblog.com, and it's making people mad that people are listening to you, best-selling author and researcher, survivalblog.com. James Wesley Rawles is our guest. Let's talk about this then, because you've got a lot of points here that we need to go over. But we're sitting here watching this. The nightmare is starting to become a reality. It's being confirmed by the day that the worst scenarios aren't just possibilities, but now probabilities. How do you see the chain reaction coming? People like Gerald Celente, people like Max Kaiser, but Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, who's been somewhat restrained, now says, yeah, look for collapse. Joseph Stiglitz, myself, I live this 18 hours a day. I'm seeing all the signs just where I live out in the hill country. It's not the richest area, but there are some wealthy people out there. I talk to the realtors. I mean, they're like, yeah, bunkers are going in all over the place. I go and look and see bunkers. I go and find a NSA spy base 2 miles from where I live. I'm driving and there's an Army maneuver going on. I see intel reports, news coming in with Army checkpoints all over, not drilling, but really running checkpoints. I mean, it's all going from preparation to a slow kind of rollout now, kind of a soft martial law at levels I've never seen, James.
Well, the Texas Hill Country may be an exception, but overall, we're definitely seeing a ramp up. If you look at what's coming out of the intelligence fusion centers, for example, the BATF just released a report very detailed about connections between outlaw biker gangs and the U.S. military, for example. A PDF of that was just released in the last few days. And it's scary to see how much these intelligence fusion centers depend upon political action groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's as if it's like one is feeding the other and vice versa. There's definitely a ramp-up that's going on.
You're talking about an echo chamber.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think the main threat to people in the prepper movement, the constitutionalist movement, is going to be selective enforcement. I don't think people at this point need to worry about a massive roundup and the apocryphal,
No, they're going to catch us at security checkpoints, trump stuff up on us.
Well, yes, and unfortunately, the way that our statutory system is set up here in the States, at any given time, any given American is probably in violation of 2 or 3 federal laws. They just don't realize it. There's thousands and thousands of laws on the book that come purely out of statutory jurisdiction. These are mala prohibitum They're not mala in se. And I'm sure you know the difference.
Yes.
So if they want to nail somebody, they can nail them. And if they can't find something that someone is engaged in, they will either plant evidence or enact some new diktat coming out of some bureaucracy.
Well, look at the new executive orders interrupt, where they say, if we say you're involved with anybody in Africa who might aid somebody we don't like, we're taking everything you got. Or if we say you're connected to somebody connected to Iran, we take everything you've got. But, I mean, what about this? What about people that work for the system, realizing it's all starting to come down because nobody's holding the corruption in check? How about people in government, FBI, you name it? I know a lot of them actually are doing this, not doing this. You know, good guys blew the whistle about Fast and Furious. What about not taking some veteran to jail for no reason because you get them at a checkpoint? I mean, what about people in the system going, you know what, this is crazy. We're not going to be part of this.
Oh, I'm confident that more and more of that will go on. More and more people are going to simply say no. People who are sworn officers, who are under delegation of authority for law enforcement agencies in the military, are simply going to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. This is this goes beyond our mandate. This goes beyond our constitutional authority. We can't do this. And they're just going to say no to that sort of enforcement. And a few of them are probably going to be very publicly drummed out of their respective services. All I can say is more power to them, because eventually, even in the worst of police states, you have people that stand up. You know,
East Germany.
Like even in Nazi Germany, Hermann Goering's brother was involved in trying to get Jews out of concentration camps. I mean, there are going to be people who will stand up and do the right thing.
Well, yeah, because it's so bad to be involved in evil. Once the evil's being committed, you can literally like chains from some type of Christmas carol. The chains of eternity are being placed on you. People are going to have their conscience burned.
Oh, definitely. And at some point, people are going to have to make a conscious decision. And my daily prayer is that the majority of people who are sworn officers are going to make the right decision. They're going to stand up for the document. They're not going to stand still and allow unconstitutional laws to be enforced.
Well, everything else is empty. Let me ask you this question. The different factions that run the global system, they've kind of gone to the point of no return, in my view. They've committed this engine of takeover that's so dangerous that if they try to stop it, it would chew them up. So now they're all in. That's a very dangerous enemy to face. Do you agree they've committed this, or is there any way to stop it? And what is their end game then if they're successful?
Wow, boy, that's a whole bucket of worms, Alex, but I'm not sure if it's gotten to the point where they can't stop it or at least slow it down, because they could certainly attempt to set things right. Now, once they've created the climate for a global credit collapse and global hyperinflation, which they have through quantitative easing, and there's monetization going on both sides of the Atlantic right now, that they may not be able to stop. Likewise, the number of derivatives contracts that's built up and the counterparty risk that's developed may be very difficult to stop. Mm-hmm. So there are aspects of it that they can't really stop, but they certainly could step in.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they've made a lot of promises to very high-level people in the banking world who basically are the ones that put them in office. And if they try to undo things that are in the best interest of the banking world, a lot of these politicians may find themselves on the evening news with some huge scandal that is unleashed upon them.
Well, I was about to say, I agree with your
Because
analysis.
they're holding blackmail on so many politicians on both sides of the Atlantic. It may be difficult for some politicians to do the right thing.
Well, that's what I was about to get to. I totally agree with your analysis. It's just it's stunningly piercing here with James Wesley Rawles of survivalblog.com. The global bankers, 6 mega banks or less, they are just so arrogant, and they've never failed. But that's what Hitler did. That's what Napoleon did. They all just think, I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning. They don't get the fact that they're destroying their own system. While they're at it, they become disconnected. And the whole posture they've got is they intend to collapse things and then pose as saviors throughout that process. And I don't see them pulling out. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see them going all the way. Sure, there's some elements that want stability, but that's more mid-level. And even elite systems are overruled by whoever is the craziest and most arrogant and willful and has the most blackmail in the room becomes the leader. And so it's a crystallization of evil. We've now reached that Roman collapse point where it's the craziest guy rules the day.
Yeah, we don't know who our modern day Caligula will be, but he's probably there. He's probably going to step up and be the new leader of the European Union or the new global governance or whatever. And he'll be the guy to announce the imposition of wage and price controls, the imposition of currency transfer controls, and the imposition of a new global currency, and it'll probably be a completely digital currency that may not even be in physical printed form. It may be strictly on a card.
And your bank account's worth nothing, and if you don't like it, you're a terrorist. They'll send a paramilitary group by to kill you and your family.
I guess it could come to that, but all I can say, Alex, is that your listeners need to take this very seriously, make some concerted prayer first, and then prepare. Team up. People need to get smart. They need to get educated on what the risks are and the countermeasures that they need to take to mitigate those risks. They need to team up with their neighbors and friends and coworkers and fellow church congregants. They need to train, and people need to get tough physically. I mean, people need to get in better physical condition because we're in for some very tough times ahead.
Oh, buddy.
They need to wean themselves of their addictions. Get away from cigarettes, get away from all the unhealthy foods they've been eating, wean themselves from antidepressants, and become as self-sufficient as possible, because the big machine, the big trolley may be coming off the tracks, and people need to be prepared. That's what my blog's all about.
Absolutely. I hate to obsess on the police and military, but they're where the rubber meets the road. We already see Detroit police, as you know, a week and a half ago, putting up signs saying, don't come in the city, we can't protect you. Years ago, different cities saying, we're laying off half the cops or more, we won't respond to all these crimes, places like Oakland. And we're going to see more and more of that. What will it be like for the general population under that versus for people that are out there in this crime-ridden system? They admit crime's going up, trying to, be a cop and all that. I want to get into that, and then I want to ask the question about your view of Obama versus Romney. Is there any difference?
I don't think there's a nickel's worth of difference there, but to step back to your previous question, I think what we can look forward to in the United States and Canada is essentially two very distinct environments. You're going to have the urban cores, which will be held by the powers that be, and then you're going to have the suburbs and the rural areas, which are going to be out of their grasp. And it'll be no matter where you are, there'll be a lot of crime, there'll be a lot of physical risk. But in the countryside, I think we're essentially going to see alternative systems set up with barter networks and with, community sustainable agriculture and all this other stuff. That's all going to come together.
Almost a renaissance.
Because people are going to want to be able to check out of the system. They're not going to want the one world global governance system. They're going to basically step aside and say, sorry, we don't want that here. And when you come right down to it, the opportunities to implement martial law will be limited to just a few cities. There just aren't enough troops to implement it nationwide.
That's right.
So the trick is, don't be in one of those cities.
What is that, New
So
York, Chicago, L.A.?
Vote with their feet and strategically relocate. And you've had people like Joel Skousen on, who wrote a wonderful book called Strategic Relocation. He was years ahead of me, and he was one of my formative influences. He's been at this, prepared this game much longer than I have. People need to strategically relocate. They need to be moving to places like the Texas Hill Country or the American Redoubt in my region here, it consists of eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. That's the main region that I'm recommending.
Yeah, Skousen, I think he agrees with you that that's the best area.
Well, yeah, he lives in the inland Northwest as well. Although, since he's a Mormon, he includes Utah in the states that he recommends. I actually don't, only because Utah is so arid and relatively overpopulated. It has a higher population density than the area.
Yeah, he thinks it's good because the average people have storable food and stuff and are self-sufficient.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a cut above.
What is the biggest death trap?
The areas will be the ones that I mentioned.
What's the biggest death trap? New York City?
Yes, definitely. Specifically Long Island, I think, will be the statistical chances of making it out of there alive are going to be in the single digits. Because when everything falls apart, there will be no transit out of New York City. There's only a few bridges and tunnels that connect Long Island, and it doesn't take a lot to shut those down. And whether it's a terrorist incident or whether it's martial law or whatever, there's going to be a lot of people trapped.
Well, look at Katrina. I mean, imagine New York City and Long Island during any type of crisis. It's a death trap.
It really is. And there's a few others like it. Actually, Seattle is also very geographically isolated, for example. And there's a number of other cities where basically the number of thoroughfares out are geographically determined. And I've always been from the geographical determinist school of history, much less modern geography. You don't want to be in a major urban area when things fall apart. Because from an actuarial standpoint, your chances are going to be slim to none. The big cities are going to be public health nightmares. The gangs will take over. The few police and firemen that are there are primarily going to be at home taking care of their own families. They'll be terrified, really. They'll be so fixated on protecting their own families, they're not going to show up to work.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody who's so scared about a gun confiscation, they'll do some highly publicized events, like you were saying, to make us all scared and drum out troops and say troops were terrorists because they were with the evil, patriots or whatever. You can see it all being scripted in TV shows and stuff. They always do that in the fantasy realm before they roll it out as the official PR, as kind of a, preparation of the mind. It's so obvious when you're awake. But on average, during any collapse in any country, but especially here, the cops and everybody, they're going to stay at home with their families. So the truth is the globalists plan to let all the gangs run wild, like Argentina or wherever, so we end up begging for the troops. It won't be, hey, Army, don't come in here. It'll be, Army, get in here, fix things.
And that's essentially what happened with Hurricane Katrina, because so many cops either had fled themselves or were concerned with their families and stayed home to take care of their families. And in some cases, a few cops were out there looting with looters. There's some pretty widely circulated videos of cops being caught, looting a local Walmart. So the number of police officers that will be available to try to institute martial law, I think really is fallacious. They just don't exist. There won't be enough of them.
Well, it's just crazy to have the cops everywhere training to fight people that believe in George Washington, as we know that, and that's not a joke if you're a listener. Just look up FEMA teaches George Washington, Thomas Jefferson are bad. I mean, it's so ridiculous. We've talked to truck drivers who have like bumper stickers on their car for my website, and TSA checkpoints like scream at them and say, "What is this?" I mean, these guys are so disconnected. They think in America you scream at somebody for their bumper sticker. I mean, it's almost comical how pathetic these welfare people are they're hiring to be TSA, who then are at checkpoints commanding the police and military. We got about 7-8 minutes left. James Wesley Rawles, survivalblog.com is our guest. It's the InfoWars 2012 Money Bomb. 48 hours, as we know we're going into this collapse. We're just trying to, people that have the extra capital, while it's still worth something, donate to us so we can put up a full, offensive resistance to the globalists in the info war with a bunch of satellite uplinks and other things. We're reaching 15 million a week conservatively. We want to up that. But if you donate to us, I mean, your powder's dry right now on the info war. I wouldn't wait. PrisonPlanet.tv, subscriptions, buy books, videos, whatever. It all supports us. We're just really putting everything in right now to try to get the word out now. The maximum effort. Militarily, as a military historian type, I mean, what should everybody be doing in the info war? I know get ready yourself, but I'm doing that. But also we need to...
The important thing is to set up alternative venues. It's important that people get licensed as ham radio operators, for example, or at least study. They don't have to get the license itself, but they need to buy the gear and study and know how to operate ham radios. People should, if they have the opportunity, look for micro FM broadcasting equipment. People should get involved with the darknet side of the internet to see how that works. People should be ready to revert to traditional bulletin board systems with dial-up modems, because the internet may be disrupted. Think in terms of alternative communications all the way down to technology like hand-cranked mimeograph machines. I'm not kidding. It may come down to that. If you look at how the resistance was run in World War II, a lot of that was hand-cranked mimeograph machines putting out broadsheets. It could come down to that. So stock up on communications gear and alternative, especially that will serve you in your local community to get the word out. Because the powers that be may shut down a lot of other venues. They may severely limit the internet. They may block out entire regions of the country that they see as, they'll call them militia hotbeds or whatever, or terrorist nests or whatever terminology they're going to use. But they can block whole ranges of IP addresses to basically segment the internet to exclude the voices they don't want to hear. So it's important that people learn about the dark net, and it's important that people buy the gear and get the training to broadcast locally, because it may come down to that.
Well, I've said that over and over again. People can buy still, mainly from England and other places, up to 200-watt, 300-watt transmitters or amplifiers. You can hook right up to recordings, whatever, or a microphone, put up on a 50-foot little tower in your backyard and, go out 15 miles. You go out at night, put up signs, Patriot broadcast, learn the truth, go on for an hour, tell them what it's going to be, and the globalists won't be able to stop people all over doing it. And
no, there'll be way too many of them, yes.
Yeah,
right.
So I've called for 15 years. Everybody should have the equipment ready and understand. I've told people use the banners, put up little printouts. People will be desperate during this to learn the truth and fire up and tell people what's going on. They can know that, people would start listening to that frequency just to know whenever you're coming on, and that can be a rally point as well. Again, they plan to shut us down, collapse things, and have us beg for total welfare takeover. That's the plan. That's why it's so important to be prepared now, so that there's a remnant of people who are not totally dependent.
Right, and as I've mentioned in my past interviews with you, it will only be those people who are well prepared physically, the people who don't have to worry about where they're going to find their next meal, the people who have good food storage programs. Those are the people who are going to have their head up and who are going to be looking at the big picture. Everybody else is going to be so caught up in just their day-to-day existence, they won't be able to be part of an active resistance. It'll only be the people that are well squared away, that have long since had their beans, bullets, and Band-Aids squared away, who can be part of the solution.
Any other areas, you know, you kind of sent a few points you wanted to get into about the harassment you've gone through lately.
That's kind of peripheral, but I think it is important just as a learning point for people. Most recently, on Wikipedia, there's been a politically motivated campaign to try to delete articles about my books. There's two different books, my latest novel, Founders, and the previous book, Survivors.
By the way, I had an advance copy. Just interrupt. Just interrupt.
And on the New York Times bestseller list, in the top 20, they're trying to eliminate the articles about those books, claiming that the books are non-notable, even though they were bestsellers.
Well, let me just stop you for a moment, because I had an advance copy of the book months ago that you sent me. You were very nice, excellent book. I didn't know that was officially out yet. I want to carry that as soon as I can at Infowars.com, but Founders is out. Tell people about the basic premise of that.
Sure. Founders is a novel set in the near future about a global socioeconomic collapse, and it's set in the exact same time period as my first novel, Patriots, and my second novel, Survivors. I took the approach with my sequels, instead of following the same characters farther into the future, as most sequels do, I instead focused on the same time period. So the novels are all contemporaneous, but the geography and the cast of characters is different with each sequel. So the latest one, Survivors, is set primarily in Kentucky and Tennessee, and then there's a major subplot that takes place at Malmstrom Air Force Base up in Montana. And there's also a focus on some characters from my first novel and their cross-country trek from Chicago all the way to Idaho in the midst of the collapse. So that's my latest novel, Founders. It hit number 4 on Amazon, and it was number 11 on the New York Times bestseller list the first week that it was out. But in addition to the campaign to try to get the web pages, the Wikipedia pages about my novels deleted, there's also been a concerted effort to try to slam my novels' ratings on Amazon. There's a campaign that's obviously orchestrated where people are putting up 1-star reviews of my novel.
Well, you know why? Because they know a lot of public that's scared won't read reality stuff, but they'll read historical or near-future novels. And so
Right.
they're scared of the narrative you've put out, because you wrote books, I don't know, 20 years ago predicting all this. They're scared of you. And again, that's the sign you're having an effect. And I just can't believe these people that serve the system are busy fighting us when all we're trying to do is have a civilization. These globalists are so hell-bent on dominating that they're destroying the very system that gave them their power to begin with, which is always the downfall of the evil, as they end up destroying them.
Yes, I think they're about to be hoisted by their own petard. And all we can hope for and pray for is that we will be in the right place at the right time with the right people. That's my daily prayer. And we have to trust in God, God's providence, to protect his covenant people. And when things do fall apart, I'm confident that there'll be enough people in the right place at the right time, that there'll be a legion of folks who will be there to reinstitute constitutional government and small government. That's what we really need.
Exactly. The globalists hope is when things collapse, they can bring in total communism, controlled by the bankers who are exempt from it, as a supposed solution. But in closing, 'cause I know you've got to go. We've got another guest host coming up, Linda West, with her guests, that we're waiting right now. We're going to play a short report, and go back to them here on the InfoWars 2012 Money Bomb. But what will it be like if things really get bad with these spoiled, rotten, dumbed-down yuppie types and others who revel in being pathetic and weak and hate those of us that tried to warn them? I mean, how pathetic will it get for these people? We see Homeland Security TV ads and print ads about zombie apocalypse describing the public as zombies. What are they trying to get us ready for?
Well, it's difficult to say exactly how it's going to play out, but there's definitely a pampered class that exists, and they are not ready for any kind of major disruption. And I think when the economic world alone falls apart for them, that they're going to fall apart emotionally. They're just going to lose it, basically.
Yeah.
And if there's a total collapse, which brings the power grid down, they're going to be absolutely unprepared because their whole world is geared around the power that they have of controlling the mass media and the whole economic apparatus via fractional reserve banking. So if that all falls apart, they're not going to be able to cope. So my advice to the people listening is you need to have the alternative worldview. You need to have the self-sufficient worldview, the ability to revert to 19th century technology. You need to be able to provide for your own families. And there's a tremendous amount of information at my website that's all available free of charge. Again, it's survivalblog.com. Dig into those archives, print out the most important articles, and be ready, folks.
I agree. I mean, if in the 20s you had all these bankers and people by the thousands committing suicide, jumping out of windows, imagine what's going to happen when it is now sold by the media as a badge of honor to be effete and pompous and pathetic. These people, have no idea, and they are a bunch of narcissists. And I just can't imagine them when their whole bandwagon ends. And in a way, maybe it's good if it all ends, because if it just keeps happening incremental, they're going to take over. Sometimes I have the sick thought of let it go ahead and collapse. Let's get this over, kind of like having a bad fever when you're sick. But then I actually see the collapse now looming, and it's really creepy. All right, well, James Wesley Rawles, thank you so much for spending time with us. We look forward to talking to you again soon, and I want to get you on the full main radio show the next few weeks to talk about the new book, Founders.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, sir, for coming on with me.
Pray Psalm 37 for all your listeners.
You want to quote it for people?
I can pull it open for you right now.
Absolutely, word for word. I mean, I know it, but I can't paraphrase it either here. But yeah, give it to people. Let's read that scripture on air.
Okay. Psalm 37 begins. Let me turn. Oh, I'm in Psalm 40 here. Psalm 37 begins. Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. So, read the Psalms, folks. We know we're going to win. We know that the evil ones will be cast down. The wicked will have their judgment day.
Well, I mean, look,
Lord. That's all I can say.
Exactly. Looking at Lance Armstrong, he was a low-level corrupt guy. But, I mean, all of these arrogant, haughty people who think they're invincible, they always get destroyed. That's the thing about people that are really into evil. None of us are perfect, but those that revel in it, I've studied history. I've seen it in my own life. People that revel in how they're the best and they can't be beat, they are just begging to be smashed. It's like the Titanic. Not even God can sink this ship. Boom, maiden voyage, sinks. I mean, they are just asking for it. And again, to read that top line up there about, the gifts that the righteous get and the peril of the wicked ones. If you guys will put that quote back up on screen for me in there, that'd be awesome. The heritage of the righteous and the calamity of the wicked, a Psalm of David 37. Thank you so much again, Mr. Rawles.
Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day. to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.